everyone, it's Hailey. Happy Bookmas Day 14. Today, we are going to be talking about your worst books of 2022. Yesterday, obviously, we talked about the best books of 2022 according to you, so it's only fitting that today we talk about the worst. I've said it all the time in like the negative videos, but I'm gonna keep on saying it because I don't want anyone to feel bad, but don't feel bad if any of your favorite books are mentioned. Like, honestly, don't take offense to it. Some of my favorite books are mentioned in here, and honestly, a lot of the books, or not a lot, but there are a couple of repeats from yesterday's video that are both people's like favorite book of the year, but then other people's least favorite. So, you know, we're all in this together. Everyone hates what we love, and it's totally fine. But before we get into this worst books list, which I explained this yesterday, but I essentially like put out a Google form and asked you guys what like your favorite book is, what your least favorite is. I also have a couple of videos that will be coming shortly that are based on that same form. So you guys can follow me on Instagram. It's just at Hailey in Bookland, just like my YouTube. That's where I generally will like post about those things, but I also do try to do like a community post so then everyone can try and have access to it. But I had 1,088 people reply to this, so I have a vast array of opinions. But before getting into the actual list, don't forget to click that subscribe button and then click the bell icon so you'll be notified whenever I post. I'm going to be posting a new video every single day for the entire month of December, so you don't want to miss any of those. And without further ado, let's get into the least favorite books of 2022. I should have mentioned, but these actually are not books that had to be published in 2022. They are just books that people read in 2022. So like I said yesterday, chances are it will probably, like a newer release will show up more often just because more people are reading it, or a more hyped up book will, but it can be literally any book. So there were like a bunch of books that were only mentioned once. I'm just going to be going over the books that were mentioned the most and counting down to the one that was mentioned the absolute most. Sorry, I was trying to find my notes and having the biggest struggle with that. But 18, wow, okay, so I really need to get going. Coming in at number 18 is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I think this one may have been on the list last year as well, actually, but 5 people said that this was their least favorite book that they read in 2022. I personally wasn't really a fan of this book all that much either. It just was a miss for me, and I really wanted to love it. I've actually tried like a couple of times to reread it to see if maybe I just wasn't in the right mood or whatever, but it just has not been for me, and that seems to be a case with quite a few, or at least 5 of you as well. So I also had asked you guys like why it was your least favorite, so I do have some reviews or commentary for all of these books. First of all, someone said that there was literally no plot, that's why it was their least favorite book, and another person said that it had confusing pacing. I did feel like it was very, very slow and there was no plot and I was bored, and that's why like I didn't like it, so I do kind of agree with these people. And another person says they don't know why they didn't like it. They had high hopes for it as well, but they just couldn't connect with the story and it moved so slow for them. Honestly, the slowness was what really got me. I'm not the kind of person who generally enjoys slower stories. I like a fast-paced book, or at least a medium-paced book. If something is slow, I get very bored easily and will just completely lose interest. So I just cannot with that. Your 17th least favorite book of the year is actually one that kind of surprised me, but that is The Cruel Prince by h.leblanc. So once again, 5 people said that this was their least favorite read of the year, and this has been a really hyped up book. It came out, it must have been in like 2017 or 2018. It came out quite a while ago, but I think that's the book that kind of made people love h.leblanc, and I read it and I thought it was fine. Didn't really feel strongly either way. Like, I enjoyed it, but I didn't think it deserved all the hype that it was getting. That sounds mean. I don't mean that in like a rude way. I just think that it was kind of overhyped, essentially, is what I'm saying. So one of the 5 people said, I didn't love the characters at all. The world building was good, but it didn't fit well with me. And that's the bottom line, right? Not everyone is going to love all of these hyped books. Not everyone reads the same book, is something that I always say, because based on who you are, you're gonna read it differently. So it just wasn't a fit. it. And that totally makes sense. The characters I know can be kind of controversial. Like another person says, I think it was just overhyped and all the characters were just mean to each other. The characters were kind of the main thing that I think got people, particularly the main character. Someone else said it wasn't awful, it was just very meh. I thought the plot, I think is what they mean, but it says plant, but I think that's just a typo, was boring, and I didn't really like the characters or the main voice too much. Not liking the main character can definitely like make or break a book. Obviously, if you're not liking the main character, but they're not, like, I feel like there's main characters that I haven't liked, but you kind of love to hate them. I can't even think of the book I was just talking about in yesterday's video that was that case. Oh, Carrie Soto is one that I think is going to be like that. I haven't even read it yet. But if you're just like not clicking with the character, it can definitely make a huge difference. Number 16 is Love on the Brain by Ali Hazelwood. Once again, one with 5 people saying it was their least favorite book that they read in 2022. Love on the Brain is the latest by the author of The Love Hypothesis, and The Love Hypothesis was super, super, super hyped up. It was absolutely everywhere, and that is the problem. Whenever anything's really hyped up, you're gonna kind of struggle. There's gonna be people who hate it, and especially when you have that hype to live up to. So with Love on the Brain being the second book by this author, it's a lot to live up to. I mean, she has had novellas, but actually someone's comment mentions that, so purely disappointment. It felt too much like the author's other book and novellas. It was nothing original. And this is kind of something that I've seen quite a bit. Like, she has a formula where it's essentially the man is like big and the girl is just so small, and she is doing whatchamacallit, she's in STEM. So the STEM part I like, but I get like the big versus so small can be kind of irritating if it's commented on so much and it's just constant. I haven't read the novella, so I don't know, and I haven't read this book either, but it is definitely something that I've seen frequently. Someone else says, everything I hate about popular romance distilled into one cliche book. Cringy millennial humor, predicted the ending from the first chapter, and this is all coming from a woman in STEM herself. I can see if it's a book that is dealing with like an area that you were involved in, you would be extra disappointed by it. The last review that I'll read said that this book was a total letdown. It's basically the same as The Love Hypothesis, but with different names, enemies, and just too much quirkiness. So in The Love Hypothesis, it was fake dating, and now this one is enemies to lovers. Not the hugest fan of that trope personally, so that kind of makes me nervous going into this one, but I'm kind of gonna be interested to see like just how similar it is. Because on the one hand, it is the author's voice, so it's gonna be kind of similar, but is it just like a carbon copy of the personalities and stuff? We'll see. Your 15th worst book of the year is actually one that showed up in yesterday's video. Like I said, there's a few on here, but that is Verity by Colleen Hoover. This also had 5 people saying that it was their worst favorite book of the year. This is definitely one of those reads that is going to be really controversial. It's dark, it's weird, and it's going to be one that shakes things up, and Colleen Hoover is also just a very controversial author. So these couple of reviews kind of made me laugh because I feel like people were going into it expecting it to be a romance after reading like Colleen Hoover's other books. Maybe they were introduced to her via TikTok and didn't know anything about her books and just were like, oh, it's more Colleen Hoover, and this book is like really hyped up and has good reviews, and then that's all that they would see. Actually, I think this book even on Goodreads was like nominated for Best Romance the year it came out, but like it's not a romance. It's like a mystery thriller story. But one of you said that you didn't realize it was so dark and it was just icky. And someone else says that it's very dark, gloomy, and horrifying to think about. I mean, personally, I kind of enjoyed the like discomfort. Wow, that was a struggle. But the discomfort of it, to me, it meant that like the author was successful. It was supposed to make you uncomfortable and supposed to make you unsettled. But like I said, if you weren't expecting that, which I'm just assuming that these people didn't think it was going to be a mystery or a thriller, they were expecting a romance, then that would be very jarring. Especially because the first little bit, like it's kind of written in a way like her romances, except minus the cliches. So the setup can be kind of similar, so I can see how that would be definitely like, wow, what is happening? Now, I didn't know what was happening in this book. However, someone did say that it was predictable and full of plot holes, and that's why it was their least favorite book of the year. I mean, plot holes, I'm not the best person to find plot holes because I'm just having a good time reading, man. I'm not trying to figure out what is happening. I'm just like, what am I reading? I am on a journey. I'm not trying to like pick holes in things like it's a strainer. No, I know a lot of people that is what they're doing when they're reading. It's just not me. I'm not about that life. I'm sure there are plot holes. They just went over my head. Predictability though, I never guess anything, so I can't really tell you how predictable it was. However, my sister, who does really enjoy mysteries and all of that, she really enjoyed this book, so I don't think that she found it predictable, if I remember correctly. Like, I don't think she would have liked it if she found it predictable. Number 14 is From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is another book that was really hyped up on TikTok. TikTok reads are always very controversial, but this had 6 people saying it was their least favorite book of the year. Someone's review is literally just, it was stupid, which I think is really funny, and at first I was like, well, that's a great review, but then I was like, no, that's literally what I was saying about Always in December when I read it, like in that reading vlog. I just kept on talking about how it was so stupid. So I was like, yeah, I can't even sit there and be like, oh, you're just gonna call it stupid? That doesn't seem like much, because no, I do the same thing and I do get it. I haven't read this book personally, but I do actually own it because I was gonna read it for a reading vlog. It is a like fantasy romance. It's super big, and actually someone says that it was too long and had no substance, and another person said that it was weirdly long, unnecessary, and getting horny in unfitting situations. I think the length is definitely, after just saying horny, I'm really uncomfortable saying that. I can't think of another word for it. The number of pages in the book and the fact that there are so many seems to be a major critique that like it was a motif that was running through these reviews. I'm very curious now though, like what kind of situations are they getting in the mood in? Like what is happening? I do know TikTok loves smut. TikTok, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but really into that. So I was expecting this to be like a smutty read, but if it's uncomfortable situations, I'm very curious now and kind of want to read it to know. But to read one last comment, someone else said, I didn't like the writing style or the characters or the romance, which really, that makes up the whole book, so I can see why it would be your least favorite. Next is another one that kind of surprised me. So your 13th worst book of the year this year was The Summer I Turned Pretty by Jenny Han. I was surprised by this. Summer I Turned Pretty came out a long time ago, but then there was the TV show. Also haven't watched that yet. I'm so behind on adaptations, but that came out this past year, and this is by the author of To All the Boys I Loved Before, which was super popular. Like the movie was super popular, and then the book became even more popular than it already was, kind of went mainstream, which was really exciting. I don't know if I've heard all that much about the TV show. I think I heard good things, but it seems that because of that, people were obviously reading the book and they were kind of let down. Someone actually says, let's just say the show was better, so that's interesting. I read this book and I actually enjoyed it. However, this is one where the main character seemed to be the glaring issue for people. Once again, disliking that main character. So someone says that Belly felt so superficial and the plot twist fell flat for me. So if the plot twist fall flat, like, meh. But another person on the main character says that they despised the main character and her non-existent personality and was bored because there was no plot. I didn't love this book, but I did enjoy it. I would be curious to see how I'd feel about it if I reread it. However, Belly is like a younger YA protagonist, so I can see why she might be annoying. I know that kind of the situation that she finds herself in isn't the best, so I can see people getting irritated with that. The 12th worst book of the year was My Killer Vacation by Tessa Bailey. This had 6 people also saying it was their least favorite book of the year, and I didn't really have interest in reading this one. Tessa Bailey also wrote What Happened When It Happened One Summer? I don't know what it's called. It Happened One Summer. Yeah, that's the title for it. She wrote that one and it was described as being like Alexis and Mutt from Schitt's Creek sort of romance, so I was all over that. I know Tessa Bailey has written quite a few romances and people have loved them. I didn't really like her writing. I found it way too corny, just kind of made me cringe, so I wasn't really into it. So this definitely wasn't one that I was really looking into, and a lot of people actually had much to say about it. So one person says it was cringe and a very poorly written cozy mystery. Cozy mysteries, I'm not really into that. I'm not really into mysteries in general. That's part of the reason why I didn't pick this one up, but I mean, a mystery that's poorly written is very disappointing. Someone else said says, honestly, authors are now like, people like hate to love, so I can write it without any context or basis for that hate, which is one of my pet peeves. And now contemporary romances are insta-lust and only list and smut the whole book. Wait, what? Oh, only lust and smut the whole book. There isn't chemistry and romance at all. This book also actually put this person into a reading slump. That is very disappointing. But yeah, like I said, that is my pet peeve. When it's hate to love, but there's no basis for the hate, that's part of the reason why I'm not really a fan of it. But I know it really is very popular. Like, people love hate to love or enemies to lovers. So it seems like it's absolutely everywhere. But when there's no basis for it and then it lasts for a really long time, don't like that. Another person said, once again, it's cringy. They hate insta-lust. They knew each other for 5 minutes and all they could think about and talk about is having sex. Like, chill. If some stranger would do the things Miles, I'm assuming that's the male main character, does to you in real life, I hope you would run away as far as possible. Now I'm kind of curious what he does. But they also kind of expected the book to be a bit more about the mystery, but it focused more on the sex life. And honestly, I think kind of looking at the cover, I wouldn't be surprised by that so much, but also I can see why that would catch you off guard if you're not expecting it. You'd be like, oh, mystery, but I think it would kind of lean toward more of the romance. Also, once again, this person mentions, and what's with that thing in romance books about tiny women and huge men? See, just like the love hypothesis. I don't know what it is. It seems like the superficiality of this also didn't mesh with people. As someone says, the mystery felt weird and the romance even worse, like it wasn't meant to be there. He was just interested in her because of how she looked and vice versa, and that person didn't like that. I don't think I would like that either. No, I did tell you guys I was gonna get dragged today. So the 11th worst book of the year is Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. 6 people said that this was their least favorite book of the year. I am not one of those. I said it was my favorite. So it was in yesterday's video as well. It's a very, you know, polarizing one. I did also react to some negative reviews like on Goodreads for Bookmas Day 10 if you guys want to check that out, but I did some negative reviews for this book. So what these people are saying isn't surprising because I already had read some of it. Not that these reviews came from Goodreads. These were in my form, but what I mean is like they were saying similar things to what people on Goodreads were saying. For example, this person never felt connected to the characters. You get to the end and everything wraps up so quickly, and they never really worked through their issues in the past storyline, which the past storyline made it seem like there was a lot of them and a lot to work through, and then they just jumped right into the present storyline and it made it feel like all of the character growth happened off page. I really like when books are told like in a then and now format, but that was kind of something that quite a few people didn't mesh with, and I can get that, you know, if you're just wanting to be in one time period. I think for the purposes of this story, it did work for me. But one of you said that you didn't connect to the characters and didn't like the timelines, and another person said there was a big past history, but I feel like their present got resolved without any real discussion. So you can kind of see those reviews are kind of saying the same thing in so many words, right? They didn't connect with the characters and they felt like there was a lot to work through, but it never really got worked through. Was that proper English? I don't think that was a very good English sentence. I think I was just like happy that they were happy, so I was just like, okay, and I loved this one, but I can, you know, I understand not everyone's going to love it. It's not for everyone. Number 10 is One Italian Summer, which had 6 people as well saying that it was their least favorite book that they read this year. I totally understand why people wouldn't like this one because it kind of has like a magical element that could be jarring, and there were certain things about it that I was kind of meh about, or else it would have been a favorite for me because the setting was amazing, and I personally enjoyed the mother-daughter relationship, but some people thought that the mother-daughter relationship read way too close. Like, I had a few people saying that here. For example, completely random story and made it sound like the main character was in love with her mom. I thought that they were just close and had like a close relationship. But the main character also seemed to be an issue for quite a few people. They said that the main character was incredibly self-involved and unlikable. I do understand there definitely are things that I had issue with in this book and the way that the timelines worked and stuff, but I think to encompass everything, it didn't like ruin my enjoyment. However, I can see how it would. Next is a book that I had never really heard of actually, but it is Twisted Love by Anna Huang. This I included in, I think it was the Hyped Up Books video, I'm not sure, but it's one, I'm sure it's on TikTok. It's a smut book and it just hasn't really appealed to me. I like reading romances, I just don't really like straight up smut, but I haven't really tried any, so Maybe I would. I don't think I'll try this one though, because 6 of you said that it was your least favorite read of this year. So one of those 6 said that they didn't like the smut or the storyline. It was completely unrealistic. And someone else said that the man was literally so possessive and controlling of the love interest. Big time Kristen Grey vibes. So this seems to be kind of like a 50 Shades of Grey sort of thing. But I mean, that's not necessarily a good thing. The 8th book is one that I just mentioned earlier, but that is It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. Like I said, wasn't really a huge fan of this one, was quite let down by it, and it seems that 7 of you agree with me. This one actually came out the year before and it was quite popular, but I don't know like if everyone has enjoyed it. It just kind of became popular. I don't know how. One of you has kind of like completely summed up everything for me, which is just, it was too cheesy for me. It really was cheesy. To elaborate on that though, someone else has said, it felt so cringe, and every time they tried to do sexy talk, I couldn't stop laughing and it felt very unnatural. It was horrible. I have to agree, it felt so forced and not at all like steamy. It just felt like, ugh. Honestly, hating a main character makes a huge difference. That has come up so much in these reviews. So this person absolutely hated Piper. They didn't find her arc believable, and all the characters were stereotypical. They were not rooting for the main relationship. The banter and the steamy scenes were so cringy, and overall they just wanted it to be done. Fair. Your 7th worst book of the year is by quite a popular author, but also I guess her books kind of are love or hate. Actually, there's one that I kind of expected to see more on these lists because it was everywhere in 2021, but it wasn't on there. But that is V.E. Schwab and her latest book, Gallant. The main issue with this one, which it was 8 people who said it was their least favorite book of the year, the main issue was that they said it was a middle grade book, but like dressed up as an adult fantasy. This is actually a graphic novel, I believe. So besides it being a middle grade book, and people, like someone said, absolutely false marketing, it is a middle grade book and the writing was bad. So many repetitive things in this book, or like I had been trying to paraphrase, it is a middle grade book and the costume of a dark fantasy. But it seems to be very boring. Someone has said nothing happened, the characters were flat, and spent like 3/4 of the book reading the description of the gardens and the walls. I don't know what this book is about, so I don't know, like it must be set in a garden or something. A book being boring just totally ruins it for me, so I understand why, like a bland main character, forgettable, I understand why people wouldn't like that. I'm very sad though because I like Victoria Schwab. I won't read this one though, obviously. Normal People by Sally Rooney is the 6th worst book of the year according to you guys. 8 people also said that this was their least favorite. Sally Rooney is another author that is popular, but also I've seen quite a few people like not enjoy her books. And I think part of it is her writing style is without quotation marks, so that can be kind of off-putting, but also these reviews kind of sum up what I've heard. One of you said, I don't get the hype. It's 2 of the blandest characters having the blandest conversations for 300 pages. I've heard it's very much just kind of like average normal people, wow, just not doing much, and that seems to be what this is saying. I mean, it is called Normal People. Those normal characters though, it doesn't seem are particularly very well liked. Someone says the characters are making their lives so extremely complicated for no reason at all and being very shallow, which can definitely be frustrating. And apparently the book also has a toxic environment, which spoiled the book. It wasn't entertaining, doesn't make any sense, and it was an awful book in their opinion. I'm very sorry that you read an awful book. The 5th worst book of the year according to you is Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. Colleen Hoover, love or hate. That's really just like how it goes. But Ugly Love, I was kind of surprised because I feel like a lot of people have enjoyed it. I read it and I actually liked it, but that was a few years ago, so I don't really know how I would feel if I reread it now. 9 of you though said it was your least favorite book of the year. One of you said there was no substance to it, simply. Someone else said that the characters in this book just don't act like normal people would. It's like they grew up in some kind of parallel universe where people have different views and different morals and values. I don't remember all that much about this book, but now I'm kind of curious. What happened in it? I remember it being about a pilot and then a romance, but maybe because it was like the first kind of like steamy book that I've read, that's why I liked it. I don't know. Now, I know Colleen Hoover is an author that quite a few people like obviously love, but then quite a few people also don't love. But this person actually, one of their second favorite book of the year, sorry, was a Colleen Hoover book, but they didn't really care for Ugly Love. They said that the book made them want to rip their hair out and just quit, which makes them sad because their second favorite was a Colleen Hoover book. This is also actually the only book that they gave 1 star that they actually finished. So make with that what you will. I will make with that what I will. Coming in at number 4, we are getting down to the nitty gritty here, but we have The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Armez. This is one that I also did not like that I read this year, didn't really care for, but 10 other people have agreed with me. This was quite hyped up on TikTok and it was fine. I didn't like hate it, but it was just fine. But those of you who did hate it or dislike it, you said that it was garbage. Terrible plot, insufferable characters, and horrible writing. That really is, once again, everything that encompasses a book, so if you don't like that, it's just not gonna happen. The writing did seem to be kind of a main critique of this, but someone else, in addition to the writing, they also said that it was cliche and cringy, which I did find it definitely was like completely cliche. And now romance is going to have cliches. That's just kind of the way that it is, but there are ways where it can be less cringy or even not cringy at all. And finally, the characters didn't work for this person. They said that the characters felt very flat and stereotypical and they mainly just annoyed them. The third worst book of the year, I was surprised because I've seen this book everywhere, very hyped up and like people enjoying it, but it wasn't on the favorites list, but it's on this list. And I have it and I've wanted to read it, but now I'm like, is this actually going to be something I like? Now I'm very skeptical going into it. But that is The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake. 11 people said that this was their least favorite book of the year. Like, it's not even like a couple people. It's actually quite high on the list. So now I'm nervous. I hadn't seen any negative reviews. Definitely the main thing was being bored. So that is partially why I'm so nervous, because I can't stand when a book is boring. Here we've got Yuck. So boring, such a letdown, you know, I'm so nervous for this. Someone else says that they heard so much hype about it, but they were so bored the entire time. Is that gonna be me? Like, I did hear so much hype about it, but I don't want to be bored the entire time. And finally, the characters were so bland, very hard to understand, and they talked and behaved like no one ever would. They should meet the characters from Ugly Love, because apparently they like grew up in a parallel universe. Maybe they grew up in a parallel universe together. The second worst book of the year, according to you, is It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. I told you, Colleen Hoover, man, she's everywhere. For better or for worse, she is everywhere. Once again, 11 people said that It Ends With Us was their least favorite book of the year, and a lot of people seem to be off-put by the marketing for it. Like they said, it's not a love triangle, the synopsis is misleading, and they didn't appreciate the lack of trigger warnings. I don't know if there were trigger warnings. I listened to the audiobook, so I do agree though there should be trigger warnings for it for sure. Someone else says that they hated the writing, the cliche plot, and they don't get the hype. They hate read this book. Colleen Hoover's writing can be like kind of hit or miss for me. That's why I enjoyed Verity, because it wasn't so cliche, because sometimes Colleen Hoover's writing can just really rely on those cliches to the point where I don't really like it. And I did find that with this book, the fact that I was dealing with such a serious subject matter, but the writing could sometimes be a little meh, but I also felt like that brought that subject matter like to your attention in a way. I don't know. This is definitely going to be a book that it stirs important conversations, but it also is going to be one that a lot of people don't like. And finally, your worst book of the year is The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. 13 people said that this was their least favorite book, and I was quite shook. I don't remember if this showed up on the list last year. I don't think it did, but when something is this hyped up, it is just inevitably gonna be like, there's gonna be people who don't like it. I was fine with it. I liked it. However, I mean, it's not going to be for everyone. And I do think it was kind of a little bit overhyped. So of those 13 people, someone said that the main character was brilliant at work, but dumb out of work, and her best friend is a giant. No. That is, she definitely could be kind of like, I don't know, a bit dumb out of work, I guess is a good way to put it. Another one of you said, poor writing, cheesy plot, characters were not likable or well developed, and they did not keep me engaged in the story. And the final review, the main character was really annoying, and the only thing she did was complain, and the book seemed to move really fast. The girl has met this guy like 4 times, and she's completely heartbroken. Like, they hardly knew each other. I mean, it definitely was kind of like an instant love thing, but I said instant love, insta love, but I felt like the fake dating kind of accelerated things. I definitely did have issues, like I can understand. So those are all of your worst books of 2022, all of the worst books that you read in 2022. I find it so fascinating to look at this. Don't be offended. I'm not offended that Every Summer After is on here. I'm just gonna go and cry after this. No, I'm not. I really don't care. But just remember, you know, everyone feels differently, and that is fine. And that doesn't mean that these are bad books at all. It just means that they didn't mesh with everyone, and that that's okay. So that being said, tomorrow for Bookmas Day 15, I'm going to be talking about every single book that I read this year and also tier ranking them. So there are some books that like there's actually quite a few that I haven't mentioned very much in Bookmas videos yet, and now I'm gonna talk about them a little bit more and tier rank all of them. So I will see you in that video tomorrow. Bye!